One day, Oliver Squirrel went out to play with his father, Mr. Squirrel. Oliver Squirrel wanted to show Mr. Squirrel all the things Oliver could do. "What shall we play first?" asked Mr. Squirrel. "I know!" exclaimed Oliver Squirrel excitedly. Did Oliver Squirrel think this was the little deer from I Love Mommy digging? "Look, Daddy Squirrel!" exclaimed Oliver Squirrel as Oliver dug and dug and dug with Oliver's little tail wagging. "Well done," praised Daddy Squirrel. But suddenly, Oliver Squirrel's tail stopped. What happened? "Help, Daddy Squirrel!" cried Oliver Squirrel. "I'm stuck." Daddy Squirrel helped Oliver Squirrel wriggle out of the hole and gave Oliver a soothing hug. "You are a good digger," said Daddy Squirrel. "What shall we play next?" "I know," said Oliver Squirrel. "Climbing." "Look, Daddy Squirrel!" shouted Little Squirrel as Little Squirrel climbed as high as Little Squirrel could go, looking around as far as Little Squirrel could see. "Well done," praised Daddy Squirrel. But suddenly, Little Squirrel closed Little Squirrel's eyes tightly. "Help, Daddy Squirrel!" cried Little Squirrel. "I'm stuck." Daddy Squirrel helped Little Squirrel climb down and gave Little Squirrel a soothing hug. "You are a good climber," said Daddy Squirrel. "What shall we play next?" "How many times do you hug your daddy in a day?" "Let us know." "I know." "Jumping." "Look, Daddy Squirrel!" exclaimed Little Squirrel as Little Squirrel jumped and jumped and jumped with a big smile on Little Squirrel's little squirrel face. But suddenly, Little Squirrel stopped smiling and splat. "Help, Daddy Squirrel!" cried Little Squirrel. "I'm stuck again." Daddy Squirrel helped Little Squirrel out of the sticky mud and gave Little Squirrel a soothing hug. "You are good at jumping," said Daddy Squirrel. But Little Squirrel shook Little Squirrel's head sadly. "I don't want to play anymore," said Little Squirrel. Little Squirrel expressed sadness, stating that Little Squirrel always got stuck and couldn't do anything. Daddy Squirrel lifted Little Squirrel high onto his shoulders and encouraged Little Squirrel to play together. Daddy Squirrel asked if daddies were the best. Then, Daddy Squirrel excitedly shouted, "Let's run!" Little Squirrel held on tightly as Daddy Squirrel whooshed through the woods. Little Squirrel shouted, "Yippee!" Daddy Squirrel suggested, "Let's climb." Little Squirrel kept eyes open wide as Daddy Squirrel and Little Squirrel reached the top of a tree. Little Squirrel exclaimed, "We did it!" Little Squirrel shouted with excitement, "And now, Daddy Squirrel, let's jump!" Splat! Daddy Squirrel cried out, "Oh, help! Now I'm stuck!" Little Squirrel giggled as Little Squirrel helped Daddy Squirrel out of the sticky mud. "You can do everything, Little Squirrel," Daddy Squirrel said proudly, as Little Squirrel and Daddy Squirrel washed their muddy paws in the stream. "You can even say, for Daddy Squirrel." Little Squirrel climbed high onto Daddy Squirrel's shoulders again. "I love playing with you, Daddy Squirrel, and I love my daddy." Little Squirrel shouted joyfully as Little Squirrel and Daddy Squirrel raced home happily together. Daddy Squirrel gives Little Squirrel piggyback rides. Little Squirrel gave Daddy Squirrel a big hug, a big kiss, and expressed how much Little Squirrel loved Daddy Squirrel because daddies are the best. Little Squirrel hoped everyone enjoyed the day. Little Squirrel loved Daddy Squirrel because they had so much fun together. Little Squirrel encouraged everyone not to forget to join next time. Goodbye.